At 9:30 a.m. on a Wednesday in July, Swiggy CEO Sriharsha Majety was already on the phone. Most employees hadn't even logged in at Swiggy's Bangalore office at the time. The 39-year-old co-founder wanted to know why the dashboard tracking the number of orders was blinking red. He rang up a senior executive who told him that one of the dark stores had serviceability and manpower issues. This is how Majety's mornings begin these days, scanning the numbers and then immediately dialing the city head responsible. And all this before heading into office himself. In his 10th year at the helm, Majety has found himself steering Swiggy out of a very tough spot. After dominating India's nascent quick commerce sector, in January 2024, Swiggy's Instamart, which commanded more than half the market in 2022, slid to second place. Now, as we reported last week, its rival Blinkit has grown to capture more than half the market, and Zepto, still burning cash, is closing in. Swiggy Instamart, meanwhile, is just left with 25% of market share as of August this year. To put it simply, Swiggy has been pushed into a corner, and both founder and organization have some intense maneuvering to do if they are to get out of it. So it began with Swiggy cutting away the fat. It shut down several side projects, the most recent of which was Genie, its pickup and drop service. But all this, so far at least, has made little difference to its market share. Which is why Majety believes that doubling down on Instamart and quick commerce is the only way to win back lost ground. The morning calls are only a part of these changes. Another is the introduction of several ex-Flipkart employees. They've been brought in to replace many from the leadership team who have been leaving Swiggy over the last couple of years. And these former Flipkart folks aren't just bringing expertise to the company, they're also bringing a whole different workplace attitude and workflow that's shaking up the way Swiggy used to do things. So, what's happening behind the scenes? The Ken reporter Nuha Bubere spoke to a bunch of senior executives at Swiggy to understand how the company has changed since it listed. And today, she's in the studio with us to tell us all about how Swiggy is setting up a new course for themselves and what challenges they have awaiting them. Thank you so much for joining us, Noha. To begin with, can you set the scene for us a little? What sort of a position is Swiggy in right now? And, especially after its IPO, which seemed to be broadly successful, right? What's happened since then that's warranting such big changes within the company?
So, Swiggy used to be the market leader in terms of quick commerce. And then in the past couple years, they lost track of their competition, the market, and lost a lot of market share even to someone like a Zepto, which was relatively newer. Blinkit now has like over 50% market share. So that gap just kept widening. And even Zomato's shares, was valued at 2.5 times of Swiggy in November 2024 when Swiggy went public. And today the gap that we see is like roughly 3x. So Swiggy has always been trailing largely behind its core competitors. And I think for it to change that, there had to be some kind of a drastic organizational shift because the way the organization was functioning up until the IPO was like healing behind Blinkit and Zepto and even Zomato. So it had to do something strategically different to change that perception altogether. And that's when the people who had helped Swiggy reach a point where they could go public were not the same people who could help it grow. So, and that was very easily understood by Majety and the senior executives there because a lot of people started leaving the organization around the time it was going to go public. So it was clearly Swiggy's way of saying that either you go big or go home. You have to bring something else to the table. We can't keep doing the same things we have been doing up until this point, or we will essentially die.
Yeah, I'm sure that's quite a lot of pressure. And especially in a time like this, a lot of responsibility must fall on the founder, right? So, how are Majety's employees seeing his leadership in this particular period?
Among my conversations, one thing, if I could point out, which was um, very clear across executives, was how Harsha was as a leader. He's a calm person. He does not shout at people. He has a way of talking to them and getting his point across. And he is a person who keeps to himself. He's a very introverted kind of a leader, but he knows when and where to step up when the organization needs it. And he prefers it that way. He doesn't want himself to overshadow Swiggy beyond a certain point. But yeah, he's mostly in meetings when he's in office. One meeting ends, the other starts. He's very much in tune with being simple rather than someone else just because he's a founder of a very large organization now. He's not someone who's like very heavy on building personal rapport with most of his employees, but at least with the senior leaders, he used to have the Saturday Connects where people in the M team, which is the leadership team at Swiggy, used to get together and they would just get coffee somewhere, talk about things beyond work. You're not talking about Swiggy with him then. I think I'd ask something like, what stands out about Harsha when he's in a room. And someone was like, the one thing you'll always notice is that the Swiggy jacket that he's wearing. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Interesting wardrobe choice. But yeah, that's how he is.
Right. I think your story mentions how he wears that orange Swiggy jacket every day as a symbol of his commitment to the company, which is pretty cool actually. So speaking of the leadership team at Swiggy, part of what's happening differently at the organization right now is, as we mentioned earlier, the sudden and rather large influx of ex-Flipkart employees joining Swiggy. When did this migration start?
We have seen a lot of Flipkart executives come into Swiggy, Instamart, literally the entire leadership team at Instamart now, which is headed by Amitesh Jha, who was previously at Flipkart for over a decade. So now he's the CEO for Instamart, and under him, we see a lot of people from the company coming into the organization. I had a really interesting conversation where just one line was told by the executive that Amitesh Jha coming to Swiggy from Flipkart has made Swiggy more Flipkart now than sticking to what Swiggy's values and principles used to stand for. It was clear that there was a certain way that Swiggy used to function earlier, focused more on the Amazonian way of doing things where you have a talk culture, you write everything out, and then you present it in meetings. But with Flipkart coming in, they always have a kind of a mentality where you take risky bets, you do things faster, and you fail fast if that is the case, but you have to try. So that is what Amitesh and other Flipkart executives are bringing into Swiggy, where the focus went away from document to now Excel sheets.
Right. So that explains the extra focus on numbers. From the story we had in the beginning of how Majety called up that executive to ask him why the dashboard was blinking. So we know that this influx began with Amitesh Jha joining as the Instamart CEO. And of course, because he was at Flipkart for more than a decade, he would definitely have people who are ready to follow his lead even at a new organization. But how has Swiggy been adjusting to this development?
Of course, when change happens, either two things will happen. People who were known or who used to work a certain way would leave because this is not the way they intend to work in an organization. Or the second way is the organization changes. And both things happened. So Instamart started losing people who grew the business a certain way. And then on the other hand, even executives like Harsha himself started adapting to this change of, okay, things used to work a certain way, but now let's see if the new way of working will benefit Swiggy in the long run. You could see that Amitesh was bringing in Flipkart people on priority because those are the people he knows best and has worked with for the longest time.
Yeah.
And Majety did not want to interject or make any decisions and wanted to give Amitesh Jha the opportunity to do what he wanted to do, let him be a proper leader for Instamart and make those decisions which come with being the CEO. for Swiggy, maybe for them, the Flipkart way of working was a new challenge that they wanted to accept, to see that maybe if that is the way for them to grow, it's not necessary that what didn't work for Flipkart would not work for Swiggy. So they wanted to like bet on that and take that challenge up. That's what they did. And once that started happening, we saw more and more people come from Flipkart to Swiggy. And that did not go unnoticed by the Swiggy people who were already there, and the change of culture that they started seeing in the last 1 year. I think if there were 2 or 3 town halls that happened, the most upvoted question, basically you send questions in anonymously in these larger town halls, was that why are we at Swiggy hiring so many people from Flipkart? Why are we okay with this change of culture happening right now?
Of course, that makes sense. Just to kind of flesh it out for our listeners, could you tell us how many people roughly have moved from Flipkart to Swiggy?
In the leadership ring at Instamart, even in the food business, there are people from Flipkart that have come in, but I would say it's like would be 15 to 20 people just in like leadership or like, second or third managerial positions.
Wow, that's quite a lot. So, now that all of these changes have started taking place, what kind of a place is Swiggy in right now as we speak?
In terms of business decisions, post the IPO, Swiggy has tried to like change a lot of things about itself to like, become profitable, um, to grow sustainably. But when we talk about Swiggy in the context of how Blinkit and Zepto have grown, particularly Blinkit, not even Zepto, we see that Blinkit has always been someone who doesn't copy other competition as such. One example I could give, which I also was like, pointed out during the course of the story, was Zepto has started this Zepto Saver as a feature on its quick commerce platform. Swiggy followed that for Instamart with Max Saver, where like the idea is that people will buy in bulk, and like the cost would be cheaper, and then you build that habit of people will come back to you for like that feature. But you're also losing money, right? You're burning money when you're selling items for a cheaper price. Blinkit did not follow that. Blinkit has always been someone which maybe they will start or like innovate first. Maybe it's in the categories that they are doing or the EMI option they started giving to their customers. But Swiggy, from like being the number one uh, platform in quick commerce, went into this position where it was following more than creating something for the customers to see and feel that, oh, it's like an innovator company now. And they do want to, I think, break that perception and be seen as like a very tough competition to Blinkit and even Zepto. So I think post the IPO, a lot of effort has gone into changing that and to make it to the position where like, it is comparable across geographies, not just in one particular city, to how Blinkit has grown and Blinkit has functioned.
Right, of course. And as we know, catching up with Blinkit is going to be quite a daunting task. But is there something you think is working for Swiggy right now?
Swiggy as an organization, I would say at least it is open to change. As an organization which is like open to that kind of structural and behavioral change, I think Swiggy is in a position where it is making decisions that can help its leaders across its businesses to take those decisions even without Majety being involved. When I look at Swiggy, when I think that um, they are doing that, they're taking possible measures to change their maybe their core DNA, whether it works out in their favor or whether it becomes an even worse thing for them, is like a second order effect.
I see. So basically, a lot of this we will only see playing out over the next few months. Of course, it's great for Swiggy that it's open to this kind of micro level change, right? Especially now that they're answerable to so many investors. And as our conversation has covered, a lot of big moves are already in motion. So, what do you think is the plan for Swiggy right now? And what challenges do you see coming up for them?
I think in the last quarterly result, Amitesh and Majety had like said very particularly that there are certain features, like certain things that they're working on, and it's mostly Instamart. It is right now, like, the focus, the key part of the entire puzzle that Swiggy needs to like figure out where it fits better for them in terms of becoming a very growth centric and profitable business. And certain things like even the max saver feature, which they want to focus on to get more people to buy in bulk and, like, come onto the platform, has its positives and negatives. Because if you beyond a point are seen as an organization or a platform which is selling products for cheaper, then you'll be stuck in that rut where you can never sell anything for a premium price. And quick commerce as a product itself is for metro and tier 1 cities where people have the luxury of paying premium to get the convenience of 10-minute delivery. But even then, in those parts, if your core proposition starts sounding like a discount platform, in the long run, it will only hurt the organization. Swiggy needs to raise at least like 500 million to, like, in the next 2-3 quarters, just to like be able to function properly, because they're running out of money. They're losing cash really fast because of the losses that are propping up. We have already seen that the growth of Instamart is also like equivalent to like the losses that are propping up for Swiggy right now. So they have to like either change that proposition or think of like a middle ground where they can, like, do both, where they can have different features for customers to, like, come on the platform more and more, but they also buy like higher AOV items so that like it goes hand in hand with how the market is currently functioning.
To conclude, everything considered, it seems like Swiggy is done playing nice. Doubling down on Instamart and experimenting, innovating is the only way out for them. And as an executive said to Nuha, the quick, agile, and aggressive Flipkart way is no longer an option, it's a necessity. Swiggy has neither the market reign of Blinkit, nor does it have piles of cash to burn like Zepto. They're stuck squarely in between two giants who are also only growing. And that means Majety, Jha, and the rest of the M team have to really up their game.
Daybreak is produced from the newsroom of The Ken, India's first subscriber-focused business news platform. What you're listening to is just a small sample of our subscriber-only offerings. A full subscription offers daily long-form feature stories, newsletters, and a whole bunch of premium podcasts. To subscribe, head to theken.com and click on the red subscribe button on the top of the Ken website. Today's episode was hosted and produced by my colleague Rachel Varghese and edited by Rajiv Sien.